4 bodies in 2 barrels. 15 years of silence. One name that wasn't real. November 1985. Bear Brook State Park, New Hampshire. A hunter walks the woods, looking for a place to gut a deer. He finds a barrel instead. 55 gallons. Steel. Rusted at the seams. The smell coming off it isn't deer. Inside, a woman and a child, wrapped in plastic, folded like laundry nobody wanted to claim. The cops come. They take notes. They take photos. They take the barrel. And then they take 15 years to find the second one. 15 years. 200 yards away, another barrel. 2 more little girls. 4 victims. No names. No missing person reports. No grieving family banging on the station door. It's like they were never born. Who were they? Who killed them? And why did nobody come looking? The answer is a man with 12 names and 100 crimes. A ghost who lived next door to your grandmother. A monster the system kept losing on purpose. This is the Bear Brook murders. And the rot goes deeper than the woods. Act 1. The Stain. A barrel in the woods, and the bodies nobody reported missing. The hunter's name was Richard Roy. He wasn't looking for a crime scene. He was looking for a quiet spot. What he found was a 55-gallon drum, tipped on its side, half swallowed by leaves and thyme. The lid was off. Animals had been at it. The smell. Copper. Rot. The sweet, wrong stink of a body that's been waiting. He didn't look long. He didn't have to. He drove to the nearest phone and called the state police. November 10th, 1985. The clock starts here. The troopers arrive. They photograph the barrel where it lies. Inside, 2 bodies. A woman, white, mid-30s. A girl, maybe 10 years old. Both bludgeoned. Both wrapped in plastic. Both decomposed past the point of easy identity. The medical examiner takes them. Dental charts get made. Sketches go out on the wires. Have you seen this woman? Have you seen this child? Nobody had. Think about that. A mother and a daughter, beaten to death, stuffed in a barrel in the New Hampshire woods. And the phones at the state police don't ring. Not once. Not from a worried sister. Not from a school counselor. Not from a landlord wondering why the rent stopped. It's like the world shrugged. The case goes cold. The barrel goes into evidence. The bodies go into a freezer with case numbers instead of names. Years pass. Snow falls. Snow melts. The trees keep growing. And the second barrel just sits there, 200 yards from the first, waiting. May 9th, 2000. 15 years later, investigators come back to walk the scene one more time. New eyes, new tools. They have a hunch. If you dump 1 barrel in the woods, why not 2? They find it under the leaf litter. Same 55-gallon steel, same rust, same horror inside. 2 more little girls. 1 around 2 or 3 years old, 1 around 4. Both bludgeoned, both wrapped, both abandoned in the same patch of forest as the first pair. 4 victims now. A woman and 3 children. All killed by the same hand. All dumped within a stone's throw of each other. All unclaimed. The investigators stare at the barrel and they understand something terrible. Whoever did this didn't just murder them. He erased them. He took their names and burned them. He made sure that when the bodies finally surfaced, no one in the world would know who to mourn. The case has a new name now: Bear Brook. 4 Jane Does, 1 killer, 0 leads. And the worst part is that he was already gone, already in another state, already using another name, already finding another family to disappear. Act 2. The Shadows. 15 years of silence and a killer wearing a stolen face. For 2 decades, Bear Brook was a wound that wouldn't close. The investigators tried everything 1980s policing had to offer. Dental records, dead end. Missing persons databases, empty. They sketched the woman's face. They circulated her image to every state, every paper, every truck stop diner from Maine to Florida. Nothing. Nobody knew her. Nobody loved her enough to look. Detectives chewed their pencils to splinters. They built theories. Maybe she was a runaway. Maybe a sex worker. Maybe an immigrant with no paperwork. Maybe a woman fleeing a bad man who finally found a worse one. The children gnawed at them worst. 3 little girls. Somebody's daughters. Somebody had to be missing them. But nobody was. Or nobody who could speak. The case files grew. Stacks of them, yellowing, boxed up, moved from desk to desk as detectives retired, died, got reassigned. Their Brook became the kind of file rookies were handed as a hazing ritual. Here, kid, see if you can do better than the last 12 guys. Spoiler, they couldn't. Then, in 2017, mitochondrial DNA testing finally placed the children. The 2-year-old in the second barrel. She was the woman's biological daughter. The other 2 girls, not related to the woman, not related to each other in the way you'd expect. Which meant the killer hadn't just murdered a family. He'd murdered a family and somebody else's children. Multiple women, multiple disappearances, multiple holes in the world that nobody had filled in. The investigators started pulling threads, cold case databases, unsolved disappearances from the late 70s, early 80s, women last seen with a man, a boyfriend, a husband, a drifter. One name kept rising, not because he was a suspect, because he was a ghost. In 2002, in California, a man calling himself Larry Vanner had been arrested for murdering his common-law wife, Eun Soon Jun. He'd buried her in the basement under cat litter. Cool customer, no remorse. But Larry Vanner wasn't his name. It wasn't anyone's name. Fingerprints came back to a man named Curtis Kimball, also fake. Then to Jerry Mockerman, also fake. Then to a chain of stolen identities reaching back through Texas, Virginia, New Hampshire, like footprints in mud, each one belonging to somebody else. Whoever this man really was, he had been using dead men's names for 30 years. He had been arrested, released, arrested again, slipped through every crack the system had. And in the late 70s, this man, under one of his many names, had lived with a woman and her young daughter in New Hampshire, in a cabin near Bear Brook State Park. The detectives looked at each other across the file. They had a suspect. They didn't have a name. They didn't even have a face that belonged to him. Just a shadow that had walked through a dozen lives, leaving holes shaped like women and children. How do you hunt a man who isn't anyone? Act 3. The Deviant. The man with no name and the families he erased like footprints. Let's talk about the kind of man who can disappear into thin air. Because that takes practice. That takes appetite. He was born Terry Peter Rasmussen, Thanksgiving Day 1943, Phoenix, Arizona. A Navy electrician's mate by trade. Smart with his hands, smarter with his mouth. Married, 4 kids, the American picture. And then, in 1974, he walked away, left his wife, left his children, vanished. His family never heard from him again. They thought he was dead. In a way, he was. Terry Rasmussen ceased to exist that day. What remained was something else. Something that wore his skin and used other people's names. He surfaced in New Hampshire in the late 1970s, calling himself Bob Evans. He took up with a woman named Denise Bowden. She had a baby girl. He moved in. He played daddy. Then, in 1981, Denise and her baby disappeared. Just gone. Bob Evans told people they'd run off together. Nobody questioned it. Nobody looked. Denise Bowden's body has never been found, but investigators believe she's the woman in the first barrel, and her infant, they believe, was raised by Rasmussen as his own, until she became inconvenient. Because that's the pattern. He didn't just kill them, he collected them. He took their lives, took their names, took their children. And when the children stopped being useful, when they got too big, too loud, too much like witnesses, he killed them too. In the early 1980s, he was in California, calling himself Curtis Kimball, living with a woman named Eun Jun. He had a little girl with him. He told people she was his daughter. In 1986, the year after the first Brook barrel was found, he abandoned that little girl at an RV park in California. Just left her, walked away. The girl was 4 years old. She was raised by foster parents. She had no idea who she was. For decades, she had no idea. She wasn't his daughter. She wasn't anyone's daughter the system could find. Curtis Kimball got arrested for that abandonment, did some time, got out, slipped his name like a wet coat, became someone else. In 2002, as Larry Vanner, he murdered Eun Jun and buried her under cat litter in their California basement. The smell gave him away. He went to prison. He died there in 2010. Cancer. He never gave up his real name. He took it to the grave. Smiling, investigators kept circling. Who was this man? They had his fingerprints, they had his face, they had a body count climbing past the 4 in the woods. But every name he'd used was somebody else's. Every life he'd built was a costume. And he had told people things, bragging things. He once told a girlfriend that he'd buried bodies in barrels in the woods. She thought he was joking. He wasn't joking. He never joked. He was a man who looked at families the way a wolf looks at a flock. And the system, every system, let him keep walking. Until DNA finally decided to remember him. Act 4. The Trap. Genetic genealogy cracks the case the badges couldn't. By 2017, the investigators had 4 bodies, 1 ghost, and a wall of dead names. What they didn't have was a real identity. Not for him, not for the woman in the barrel, not for 2 of the 3 children. The mitochondrial DNA had told them the 2-year-old was the woman's daughter. The other 2 girls were strangers in the family. That should have been impossible, but this killer specialized in impossible. Then came genetic genealogy, the same technique that would later catch the Golden State Killer. You take crime scene DNA, you upload it to public ancestry databases. You find distant cousins, You build their family tree. You narrow the branches until only one name is left. In 2017, an investigative genealogist named Barbara Ray Venter took on Bear Brook. She started with the abandoned little girl from California, the one Rasmussen had left at the RV park. The girl who'd grown up not knowing her own name. DNA said the girl was not Rasmussen's biological child. She was somebody else's. Somebody who'd been disappeared before her. Ray Venter built the tree. She found cousins. She found a name. The girl's mother was Unsun Jun? No. The girl's mother was a woman named Denise. Wait, no. The girl's mother was a woman named Dawn Bowden? No, Denise was the first barrel. The girl from the RV park, eventually identified, was given back her real name, Dawn Bowden, daughter of Denise Bowden, the infant who had vanished with her mother in 1981. She was alive. She had survived him. The other children in the barrels had not. Imagine getting that phone call. You're 40 years old. You've spent your whole life not knowing who you were. And a stranger calls you and says, "Your mother was murdered. Your stepfather did it. He killed 3 other little girls. And you should have been the 4th. Then they came for him, or for what was left of him. In June 2017, investigators announced that Bob Evans, the man who lived near Bear Brook, was Terry Peter Rasmussen, the Navy man, the vanished husband, the serial killer with a dozen names. He'd been dead 7 years. They were arresting a corpse. But they had him. They had a name on the monster. In 2019, more genetic genealogy work cracked the woman in the first barrel. Her name was Marlise Honeychurch, from California. She had 2 daughters, Marie Vaughn and Sarah McWaters, both little girls, both with her in the woods. They had been missing since 1978. Marlise had brought a new boyfriend home for Thanksgiving. Her family didn't like him. There was a fight. Marlise left with the boyfriend and her daughters. Her family never saw them again. The boyfriend was Terry Rasmussen. 3 of the 4 Jane Does had names now: Marlise, Marie, Sarah. 3 women turned back into people. The 4th, the middle child, the unrelated girl, she's still nameless, still waiting, still in evidence storage in New Hampshire. But they got him. The ghost had a face. The ghost had a grave. Act 5. The Void. Names returned to the dead and the ones still waiting in the dark. So what does justice look like when the killer is already in the ground? It looks like a phone call to a sister in California. The sister who waited 40 years, who never stopped wondering what happened to Marlise and the girls, who got told, finally, that they'd been beaten to death and stuffed in a barrel in New Hampshire by the boyfriend nobody trusted. 40 years. That's how long she carried it. And the answer didn't bring peace. The answer brought a different kind of grief. The grief of confirmation. The grief of knowing exactly what they suffered. It looks like Dawn Bowden learning her real name in middle age, learning her mother's face, learning that the man who raised her, who abandoned her at 4 years old in an RV park, had murdered her mother and would have murdered her too if he hadn't gotten bored. How do you metabolize that? How do you wake up and brush your teeth? It looks like investigators staring at the case file of the still unidentified middle child, the little girl in the second barrel. 4 years old, give or take. No name, no mother coming forward, No DNA cousin close enough to build a tree. Somebody, somewhere, knew this child. Somebody held her once. Somebody fed her, dressed her, called her something. And then Terry Rasmussen took her, killed her, and erased the memory of her so completely that not one human being on this earth has come forward to say, I knew her, I loved her, I lost her. That's what evil really does. Not the violence, the silence after. Rasmussen died in a California prison in 2010 of cancer before anyone knew what he was. He never confessed to Brook. He never gave up the names of his victims. He never explained why. He took it all with him, smug to the last breath. Authorities now believe he may be responsible for other unsolved disappearances, other women, other children. Cold cases up and down the West Coast, up and down the East. Decades of him moving, killing, changing names, slipping the system. Every state he passed through has cold cases. Every cold case might be his. We will probably never know the full count. He was arrested multiple times under multiple names. He served time. He was released. The system had him in its hands and let him go again and again because nobody connected the dots. Nobody could. The dots were named Bob and Larry and Curtis and Jerry, and none of them existed. 4 bodies in the woods. 1 man with no name. A system that lost him a dozen times. Brook isn't a story about catching a killer. It's a story about how easy it is to disappear in America, if you're willing to be nobody. Epilogue. What remains? Who's still waiting? What never gets forgiven? Marlise Honeychurch was 33 when she died. Marie Vaughn was 11. Sarah McWaters was 23 months old. The 4th girl is still a Jane Doe. Somewhere out there, her name exists in a school record nobody pulled, a baptism nobody remembered, a birthday nobody celebrated again. Terry Rasmussen lived 67 years and used at least 7 names. He fathered murder. He fathered abandonment. He fathered a daughter who survived him only because he got tired of her. The genealogists who cracked this case did what generations of detectives could not. They reached into a database and pulled 4 names back from the void. That's something close to a miracle. It is not, however, justice. Justice would be Marlise and her daughters at a kitchen table in 2024. Justice would be the 4th child knowing her own birthday. What we have instead is a barrel, a stretch of New Hampshire woods, and a name on a tombstone in California that nobody visits. He won. In every way that mattered to him, he won. The dead just got their names back. That's all we could